Well, hello and welcome to the latest edition of Borders Rugby in Focus. And with me and Dale today, we've got Aaron McColm from Selkirk and Robert Hogg from Jedforest. And we'll be obviously bigging up the game, which is happening on Friday night. We'll also be meeting up with Rob Moffat, the director of rugby, a co-director of rugby at Melrose. And that's coming up a little bit later on. But let's start with you, Robert, because it was 10-10, the match at Philip Hogg on Saturday. And a lot of people were thinking that probably you would be the happiest to go away with the 2 points.
Oh, definitely. Certainly been involved behind the ground with the second team. It seemed to be pretty quiet atmosphere. I just assumed that Jedforest had took a commanding lead, only to come through to Philip Hogg at half time and see that Selkirk were 5-3 up. Conditions, yeah, they weren't great on Saturday, but it's a typical border derby. It's form goes out the window in regards to when border teams play each other, and to have came away with a draw, as you say, after 30 plus phases, hardly been able to pull 3 phases together the first 75 minutes, it's a great credit to Jed to at least take something away from it. Will it be the same score this weekend? If highly doubt it. I think there'll be a lot more open flowing rugby. Both teams, on their day, they're both great teams, and dare say it, they could easily compete with the rest of the teams in this league when they're back to full fitness in regards to players and whatnot.
And you mentioned the 30 odd phases, 31 in fact, which was pretty good for the last play of the match when everything had to count, and it did. Yeah, I mean, it shows great credit to the boys that never give up attitude that they've got. It's been a tough few weeks for the boys. A couple of injuries to some key players has made a bit of difference to the guys. Morale's still decent, but yeah, to get 30 plus phases on a day like that, it really shows that they're still determined to at least climb the league table. Maybe perhaps not compete with the top 4, but they've still got a lot of rugby in them, and it just takes a bit of confidence boost like that to take something into a game this week against Selkirk, knowing that they finished the strongest of the two. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they bring on Friday night, especially the first opening 10 minutes of the game after that. Yeah, we'll be certainly talking more about that match shortly, but we also must mention with Aaron that 31 phases, but of course, as well as credit to Jedforest, it was credit to Selkirk as well for not being penalised, and the discipline was a lot better for that end bit, because, I mean, one penalty could have been given against you.
Yeah, definitely could have. Obviously Robert touched on it, credit to Jed for getting the 31 phases, but I think we were in the change rooms a wee bit disappointed with that result, but it's rugby, and sometimes things don't go your way and you just have to accept it and move on. But no, credit to Jed for getting the phases and scoring a last minute try.
Gary Munro was given that conversion, a bit controversial. I thought personally, for what it's worth, I thought it was over. I thought the wind took hold of it after it had gone between the posts, but we didn't have the greatest angle, but certainly the guys behind the sticks who were judging it had no doubt at all. What's your own opinion on that from where you were?
You must have been sporting Jed that day then, weren't you? Nah, listen, as I said to Will on the way over, it's if you're a Selkirk supporter, it went miles left. If you're a Jed supporter, it went through the middle. So you just have to accept that the touch judges have made a decision, and you have to move on from that, because if you dwell on it, you end up getting angry, and I'm sure the referee's got a wee bit stick for the crowd on the way back into the changing rooms. But yeah, credit to Gary for kicking it. It's a lot of pressure on him to draw the game at the end of the day. So, and
as a kicker yourself, you'll appreciate both sides, won't you?
Oh, definitely, yeah. The pressure does hit you when you get under there. So.
One of those games where beforehand Selkirk were off the back of a good win the week before, and Jed, Robert's already mentioned, they've maybe not hit their strides this season, and weeks have gone by, and I've said how much talent's in both teams, but they've both been struck down with injury. So going into the game, it was difficult to judge who was going to win it, who was going to come through. Personally, I would have thought Selkirk would have came through it when I looked at the squad on paper. With the recruitments that they've recently got on from the draft as well, it's really strengthened Selkirk. But it's one of those games that, you know, if you give yourself a chance going into the last few minutes, if you're within a score, you know, 7 points is quite a lot, especially in those conditions, but if you're within a score, you've still got a chance. So to go back down to the wire, it's a good result for Jed, and they'll be, you know, chuffed to get that confidence boost. And you would say now in the swing of things, they'll probably be going into Friday night's game as favourites between the two teams.
Now, Robert, and I'll be asking Aaron exactly the same question. It's not been the greatest start to the season this first half. Obviously, there's been injuries, there's been COVID interruptions for both Jed and Selkirk, and that couldn't have helped at all.
No, I'd say with the first game of the season, Jed, Selkirk, we were struck by COVID. I felt that Jed were probably at their strongest then, and just as the games have gotten on, you know, facing bigger opposition, it's took its toll on some of the boys, and there has been some injuries to key players. We're still missing a few key players, if I'm being honest. And like I said, we haven't seen the best of Jedforest this year. Second half of the season, I think lessons will be learnt, certainly in regards to playing certain teams. So I do believe that regardless of the result this Friday coming, I think both teams certainly can easily turn over any other team in the league on their day. But, you know, injuries, weather conditions, they all have to they prove a vital part of a game. But no, I think certainly we've got a lot to prove this second half, and I think the boys will know that themselves, and they'll be mentally up for these games going forward.
Selkirk especially have had a few injuries at the start of the season, but we're starting to get a bit more consistent squad now and pushing on. Training's been really well, you know, we're getting 37 boys at training, you know, so it's pretty impressive. Our twos team have got 7 boys sitting out on a Saturday, so no, we've definitely got competition there, so it's great to see.
Okay, we'll come back to that obviously a little bit later on. So let's have a look, Dale, at the weekend and the Hogg game at Curry. Very difficult place to go, Millennium Park, as we all know. They came away with 2 points, but you know, talking to Matty Douglas afterwards, he would have preferred the 4 or the 5.
Yeah, I think Millennium Park's a difficult place to go any time of year, especially when it's wet and windy, because it was horrible rugby conditions for all players at the weekend. I think on the run of the way the form's been going in the league, Curry have been really, really strong since their defeat in the opening day of the season against Hogg. So to go up to Millennium Park and get those 2 points, I think is a good return for them. You know, they've got a good win against Curry. They've still stolen some points off them in the league. Curry still have to play Mar again. They've still got a lot of fixtures. Glasgow Hawks are looking strong. We've already discussed the border derbies, that obviously the one at the weekend passed, but there's still a lot of border derbies to go. So teams don't like travelling down to the borders as well. So there's still a lot of rugby to go. However, I think on the balance of the result, and reading the reports and stuff, it almost looked like, you know, Hogg had to fight really hard to come away with those 2 points. So disappointed not to win the game, but they've came away with points which at the beginning of the season, probably on paper, looking at the squad, we might not have thought they would have got them. So 2 points I think is a good return for Hogg.
In the National One, we got 3 wins. Kelso won at Watsonians. We saw Gala win at Highland by 1 point, 16 points to 15. And, of course, the match that we were at, Melrose against Ayr, the scoreline probably flatters them a little bit because of that late try, 28-17 in the end. But a victory is a victory, and any time against Ayr for Melrose is good enough for them. Yeah,
obviously I was at the Melrose game, and I think they never really looked in danger of losing that game. They conceded the early score to Wood, who got the opening score after about 2 minutes. But from there, Ayr didn't really threaten too much. And it was only at the end of the game where they looked like they were going to try and encroach on that Melrose line. But great turnover. Melrose go up the other end and score a try. So they looked a little bit more comfortable. They've got a lot of lack of depth up front, I think. We're obviously showing with Graham Dodds coming back into the squad after a long hiatus. But, you know, I think that does highlight the kind of soft underbelly they've got up front. However, every player that played there fronted up, and that's a great result for them. I think they looked a lot more structured, they look a lot more directed than they did against Gala a couple of weeks ago. So it's a good win for them. Kelso, obviously, against Watsonians, that's something that was expected. But it was a difficult game for Gala up at Highland because Highland have beaten Melrose, up there. So to go up there, Gala are starting to get a bit of momentum now. And I think National 1 is a really interesting league. I think there's still only 7 points separating the top 7 teams. So it's really, really interesting in that league. And Ayr have got bigger this weekend, so it's through at Milbrae, it's early on in the day, Bigger are not happy about it, so it's really interesting in that one.
And of course, that result puts Kelso back in the top half of the table as well, which they'll be delighted about. But they need to kick on, because what's Onions Boroughmuir expected wins. But next up, it's going to get tough again.
Yeah, Kelso have notoriously never been good starters to a league, so they've had quite a good start to this campaign. But I think consistency is key for them. They've kept a lot of guys quite fresh as well. They look like they've got quite a structured squad when you see it on, getting announced just before the weekend. So I think they do need to start picking up these wins, and maybe picking a scalp up here or there as well when they play one of the teams. Now it would be like Heriot's bigger, perhaps Melrose as well. Like these teams in Gala, they need to make sure that they put them away, because obviously they had that defeat against Gala at Netherdale. That was an opportunity for them to perhaps sneak a win. But these tight games, if they can tip the balance in them, they can potentially just be pushing up towards that promotion chase.
International 2, and a disappointing result, whichever way you look at it. Peebles 13, Glasgow Accies 16. Glasgow Accies were below them in the table, still are in fact after that result, but that's one which they should have got.
Yeah, definitely. I think Peebles are really struggling with injuries just now, like a lot of clubs are. But certainly up front, they're lacking a lot of depth. Unfortunate injuries. We touched on it last week. There's some big players there. Their captain Neil Hogarth, Willie Aitkins. He's no spring chicken now, but he's having to go 80 minutes. So they're disappointed. They're having to bring in a lot of young players as well. Doesn't matter. They've had some good results this season with the lack of depth. But I think they were. I've seen on social media they were kind of complaining that they thought a last minute try had been chalked off. But it's a game they should have won, and I feel they're starting to slip away from that promotion chase now.
And National 3, what about this for a result? Berwick 81, Strathmore 0, and they've got Strathmore again this Saturday on their patch, but I can't see them coming back from an 81-0.
No, definitely not. And again, Berwick are a team that are looking to try and push on and put a bit of pressure up at Last Wade at the top of that division, because they've had, as we've said, a few indifferent results away from home, some tight losses, but that's a big confidence boost for them, a big heavy win, and then they get to play them again and get the confidence up and keep pushing on in their league.
And there's always a story in the semi-juniors, isn't there? Kelso Quins almost pulled off a shock against Hoyk Youth. I think it was 12-7 in the end, a match which was played in Kelso, but again, that means Hoyk Youth remain unbeaten. But we saw Gala Wanderers, who've been improving all the time, go to Melrose Wasps and beat them.
Yeah, Gala have been improving. I think looking at the results over the last few weeks, they've started to grow and really hit a bit of form. The Kelso Hoyk game, I think that was a culmination of Kelso playing really well and Hoyk playing a little bit poor. But I think that's one of those things when you're winning games, you can play badly and win. And Kelso were one of the teams that were there or thereabouts a few weeks ago in this undefeated section that we had in the semi-junior. It is starting to kind of feel itself out a little bit, but overall in the league I think Hoyk Youth will be happy that Gala have turned over Melrose, because it gives them a little bit of breathing space at the top of that league.
Well, there's a lot been going on at the Greenyards in the last couple of weeks. We've seen Rob Christie, of course, resign and go to Edinburgh Rugby. Mike Dalgetty has left the club now as well. So yesterday I went down and spoke to the co-director of Rugby, and that is Rob Moffat. And the full interview is actually on our website at bordersrugby.net. You can have a look at that. But here's a couple of highlights from that interview right now. Very tricky balancing two clubs effectively at one venue, Melrose, Southern Knights. Obviously, there's been differences of opinion going on. How difficult has that been to manage? I mean, you're now coming in and looking after the Southern Knights.
Yeah, no, we'll always be dead honest. It is. I'll be involved in the Southern Knights. Well, I'll not be managing it, but the director of rugby's will take a bigger role in the Southern Knights and looking at that, because we need to get the two closer, because it's not two separate clubs, and we all could work harder at that, and we will. It's still early days as well. It's the whole Super 6, maybe going into Super 7 rugby, you never know, or Super 8, but it's still in its infancy really because of COVID. You've probably had maybe a season and a half or something like that, so it's early days. It's the same as everything, that you and I were talking about the pitch here, when the pitch was looking like a building site, everybody was jumping up and down. Nobody says anything at all about the pitch now, apart from what a great facility for people to play rugby on. So, it's a typical small town, small area, everybody has their say, but I think everybody connected with Melrose and Southern Knights has a bit of responsibility to to pull the club and the Southern Knights closer together.
And you're the man, aren't you, to do it, because you have been involved with so many clubs, Edinburgh Rugby, Border Reivers, Melrose, of course, and tremendous experience in the game, in and out of the borders, and so much respect for you as well from many, many places. So this is something which I'm pretty sure you will, put your heart and soul in and try and kind of mend bridges and get things rolling.
We'll certainly try. I think, for me, like when I came in and asked me to get involved director rugby, they laughed, because I said I just want to do the rugby, I don't want to do the politics. So I'm still like that, really. For me, it's all about the rugby. This place is all about giving everybody the opportunity to be the best player they can be, whether you're a 5 or 6 year old little mini wanting to come here and play rugby, through to anybody who wants to come and develop their rugby. So it's exciting, because this is it's a difficult thing to think your club or the Southern Knights is a stepping stone, because we all want to think it's just about us. But Jim Telfer walked past us a while ago, and there's a great example. I look at Callum McRae, who's coaching at Edinburgh now, John Dalziel, who's coaching Scotland. Spoke to Mark Robertson yesterday, who's just back on holiday just now, who's coaching at Claremont Auvergne. They're great stories, these, and that's what the club's about. The club's about giving people the opportunity to develop themselves, not to stay at Melrose or stay at the Southern Knights, and that's hard for the coach. The coach will want to keep his best players, but what we've got to do is say, look, it's time for that player to move on to pro rugby in Edinburgh, Glasgow, or club player to move on. So that's what it's about, really.
Now, of course, last night I believe you spoke to the players themselves. They would have been in the dark as well, which is why we've delayed the interview till today. What's been their reaction?
I think it's uncertainty for them. They're obviously thinking, right, who's going to be coaching, because that'll be different for them. They're all thinking about contracts, because that's what it is in professional sport at this time of year, or for them at this time of year, because the season's finished. So we're dead up front when we say, look, the club's having a review of the rugby. It's along with the SRU as well, the other clubs have looked at how Super 6 can improve. So how can maybe the SRU support the clubs a bit better? They do well, but how could that improve? So we want to sit down and do that properly. We'll sit to the players, we won't hang around. We'll tell them very soon whether they're getting a contract or not. So they'll just find us true to their word. Andy Purvis, who's chairman of the club now, Graham Burgess, the finance director, it takes a lot of money to run this club as well, and the last couple of years have not been easy, and so they're very honest with the players where we are financially as well. So Melrose, if he'd said maybe 3 years ago that Melrose wouldn't have had a sevens and they've still got a semi-professional club going, that's not been easy for anybody, that. So, but we'll just be upfront and honest with the players, and we've said to players, like, the last, I'm saying 30 years, but when I was a player here, Melrose weren't as good, and that's obviously because I was playing, Stuart. But since, if I'm looking at the last 30 years, Melrose have always been there or thereabouts in Scottish rugby. So they've always tried to be the best they can be, they've always tried to improve, they've always tried to kick on. Just the same now, very same.
Also as well, I mean, before COVID, the Super 6 plan was there, and it included a cross-border competition with Wales. Yeah. That seems to have kind of come off the table now, and that presumably is a big concern for players and the club themselves.
Yeah, it probably is. I'm not sure all the ins and outs here. Andy Purvis had a meeting with the SRU yesterday. They were going over one or two things, and I think COVID's killed a lot of that, and hopefully that gets moving again. I can remember the good old days when pro rugby started, and I was with, I think I was with at the time, I was with Glasgow Caledonia, they called them at that time, and we went into a Welsh league. There was the two Scottish teams and 10 Welsh teams, and we went down the bus, so we had 10 bus journeys to Wales, and it was crazy in these days, but that's how it was. So as I say, Super 6 is just starting, so it's hopefully got a rosy future, hopefully.
And Mark Dodson at the SRU has always made no secret of the fact that he wants to build it to a Super 8 and then a Super 10, and who knows beyond that. And there has been talk in the press this week, obviously, about London Scottish. We've all seen the letters, the communications that have gone on, and the talk of a team in Glasgow, which was always one of the criticisms, I think, early on. Get Glasgow involved. And of course, if you're building teams into it, then you're building weeks and weekends into it as well, which means more rugby, and you then wouldn't need to worry about cross-border.
No, that's very true, Stuart. I think the increase is an interesting one because it is a strain on everybody. Like if you look at a club like Melrose and you look at having the Southern Nights and the rest of the club, it's a lot of work for a small number of people. Like, so you find there's a game here on a Friday night, it's maybe the Southern Nights. The club team, Melrose team, are playing a Saturday, and the Storm, and the under 18s. But who's the stewards? Who's helping wherever? Who are the volunteers? It's the same number of small people. So, people like myself and Andy Purvis are speaking to it. So if there's anybody listening who seriously wants to volunteer, we're asking everybody, because we basically need more help. And every club will say the same. Volunteers are thinning the grind wherever you go, Stuart. So to keep this place going and keep it thriving, we need more people putting more into it. As I say, we are one club, but running a semi-professional team and a club team and a second team and under 18s, 16s, 15s all the way down, it's a lot of work.
Now, one thing we must ask you before we end this is the Melrose Sevens. Now, everyone's been dying for news in the last 4 or 5 weeks, and I know I've put off meetings with certain people at the club because things keep changing week on. It's obviously not an easy thing to organise. No. We know this is one of the biggest events in the world. But what can you tell us at this moment?
Yeah, well, what I can say is there will be a Melrose Sevens next April, on the second Saturday in April. Arrangements are still, Phil Morris is driving that, and he's still finalising things just now, and it might not be the 3-day event because of COVID and all the problems that might, because nobody knows. It's uncertain what we're going to be like in April even, and people coming in and whatever else. So, but there will be a Melrose Sevens on the second Saturday in April next year. And we might have something later in the summer as well.
Rob Moffat, and as I said, if you want to see the full interview, it's available now at bordersrugby.net. Well, we haven't spoken about Scotland yet. A great win against Australia, the third win on the trot for them, 15-13 at a packed-out Murrayfield, and a real feel-good atmosphere at the end of it.
Yeah, I think the game maybe wasn't the exciting, open flowing game that everybody would have expected from those two teams. It was a bit riot rugby. I think both teams, a lot of unforced errors throughout. But I was saying to Aaron on the way in, it's nice being a Scotland fan, being disappointed with a 15-13 win against Australia, because it wasn't the performance we were perhaps looking for, but it was a great result. And you see in the press Finn Russell talking about us wanting to be one of the top 5 teams. I think this Six Nations coming up is a huge opportunity for Scotland to really push on, and they've got 2 games at home against England and France, which are usually our toughest games, which we won last season, and then we've got the 3 away from home, which you'd be hoping to really pick up some points and on those fixtures and maybe get a couple of wins away from home. Now we've got the confidence. Now we know we can travel, but overall good game of rugby. It was competitive. It was a lot of errors in it, but it was just good to see a packed out Murrayfield again.
But the confidence in the camp, I mean, I've never witnessed anything like that for the last 20 years or so. I mean, they're playing with confidence. They've got the monkeys off the back. They've won in Twickenham, they've won in Paris, they've done all that sort of thing, and this new squad, it's all kind of getting rid of all the baggage, and I think the only thing left to do now is beat New Zealand and of course win the World Cup, which probably isn't going to happen, but we feel that there's a squad there that are potentially good enough to beat New Zealand.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's refreshing to see the depth we've got, because even looking at what we had at hooker, Turner's came into hooker being third choice essentially after McInally and Brown. He goes off injured, and Ashman comes on and he scores a try. So
what a try!
Yeah, I know, it was a great finish for a hooker. It was almost like he was trained like a winger to jump out of the contact, keep his feet light, and got on at the corner. So I think that's one of the things we've lacked over the last few years. Like when we used to have Ross Ford and Gordon Bullock, underneath them you had Scott Lawson maybe flying about. You had players that you really you wouldn't have hung your hat on, really. Where now we've got an abundance of talent throughout, and I think that's, it's been a gradual process with Scotland when it came into the professional era. It's been developing, and I feel now we're starting to compete now, and we've found our footing, and hopefully it continues to grow and develop.
So what about the world champion South Africa, who kind of stumbled a wee bit in Cardiff?
Not a chance. I think I've seen the squad. We were explaining this on the way in as well, and the squad it's just so strong. They don't play the most exciting brand of rugby. They're very muscular. They're big guys. They kick well, but their bench is huge as well. Like Kitsoff and Marks on the bench. Pollard's on the bench as well. I think South Africa, as long as we put in a good performance, I think they will obviously be favourites. If we win that would be a huge victory, but I feel that might just be a little bit too far for Scotland just now.
So that's a 1 o'clock kick-off on Saturday, and that's the reason why we haven't got so much club rugby at the weekend. But on Friday, Duns at home to Haddington in East League 1 under the lights at Castlegate. Obviously, Melrose are going to Stirling Wolves as well to play at Bridge Hall over there. And then, of course, there's the big one. We'll talk about that in a minute. But what about those other two fixtures?
Yeah, Duns will be looking for a little bit of confidence. Obviously, they've not had the best of seasons, but Friday night rugby is great, especially if you're at home. The other team have to travel after work, and after a long week at work, they've got to try and dust themselves down, get on the bus and get down to, for a Friday night game. Melrose are probably the polar opposite of that, but they'll need to go up to Stirling Wolves and put in a performance which backed up their victory against Ayr, because they'll be wanting to try and sneak themselves back into that promotion battle. But Friday night rugby is great. I'm looking forward to Jed Selkirk, but I think we spoke about it in one of the earlier episodes, the Earlston one we done, about the kind of lack of Friday rugby. So it's nice to see that there's some club fixtures and amateur fixtures in the calendar during the week.
And this was going to be our very first game, wasn't it, Jed, against Selkirk? The big build-up, and it didn't happen, of course, at the time because of COVID, but we're all gearing up for what should be a fantastic event. Obviously, Jed will be looking to step up from their performance at Philip Hogg, but how do you see it going? Because if you look at on paper of the recent history, Jed have just got the edge.
Riverside Park's a difficult place to go at 3 o'clock on a Saturday on a nice sunny day, so when it's a little bit boggy and it's a 7:30 kick-off on a Friday night when it could be a bit cold, it's going to be even worse. So Jed have home advantage, and I've said in the last few weeks I've not been too impressed when I've seen Jed. I think they've been a bit flat in their performances. I think they rely too heavily on some of their bigger players to do the work for them. They never really earned the right to try and really take on defences, particularly the Hoyt game. If I'm being trying to pinpoint a game, so I wasn't too impressed with them. But then when I've seen Selkirk, they had a good performance against Aberdeen Grammar, difficult opponents because it's difficult to judge because they've been so poor. But they did have flashes of real brilliance, and I thought on paper with the introduction of like Kieran Clark and some of these players that have came in at Selkirk, I thought it made them a lot stronger. But I think the result of the weekend, it's thrown my head up in the air again. I don't really know who's going into that game favourites. I think Jed maybe just edge it because it's at Riverside Park on a Friday night. There's going to be a big crowd there. It's a nice border derby. It's nice to cover, so it's a difficult one to call.
Well, Robert, only 6 days to get your act together effectively for this one and erase the memory of Philip Hogg. In a way that's good because you can climb straight back on the horse and get it right this time.
Yeah, it's just to touch up on Dale said it. We always like to think we're tough hosts, specifically on a Friday night. We love Friday night games, and as I said, it'd be great to see a crowd back down at Riverside Park, border derby. It's really going to be a tough match. I'm the same as Dale. I can't call it after Saturday. Had Jed won that game, the last play, I would have said the momentum goes with Jed. But yeah, both teams look, it's a dogfight. They're both in the bottom half of the league. They're both looking to prove a point. So I think, it'll be a battle, and whoever does win on Friday really will probably kick on from there and pull off some good performances. It's just tough. It's difficult because both teams aren't that used to being at the bottom of the table. They're usually seen in the top halves, certainly in the past couple of years gone by. So this is unfamiliar territory, and from a Jed point of view, we've got a lot of new young players who obviously had to miss out a year of their last year of youth rugby due to the COVID. So it's like they're getting thrown into the deep end, and I'd like to think that they've took it well. And it's a great opportunity, certainly being in the bottom half of the table, to bring these young guys on and give them the taste of senior rugby. And yeah, they're really buying into it. So I think, yes, it will be a tough game, but certainly this will be a good learning curve, certainly for the younger players, and in years to come, this will really help them develop, because I do believe border derbies are the hardest games of rugby you will play. Apart from the fact that if you go up to like Glasgow or something on a wet Saturday, then you're really in for a dogfight there. But yeah, I'm the same. I'm completely neutral. Right now I can't pick a winner, but I'll always favour Jedforest, and I think, like I say, is from a Jed point of view, all it's going to take us is a little bit of a boost of confidence, like a win on Friday, and I think we will kick on from there and really upset some of the teams in the top half.
So that's the Jed point of view. We're coming now to Aaron for the Selkirk point of view, and I'd imagine the mood in the camp is obviously one of frustration because of the result and how it went, but one where, again, you'll have this great opportunity to put things right at Riverside Park.
Yeah, definitely. It's not very often that you get a 6-day turnaround to play the same team again. So obviously the boys were frustrated with Saturday. We aimed that game as a win. So yeah, boys will be frustrated, but down at training last night it was good atmosphere, good tempo to training and stuff. So yeah, boys are firing for Friday night.
And Scott White, as your head coach, is a man whose glass is always half full rather than half empty, and I'm sure he'll be saying some wise words over the next couple of days.
Yeah, definitely. Scott's great. He's great with the boys. He gets the boys fired up. But to be honest, it's a border derby, and boys can't get excited for that, then there's no point playing rugby. So boys will be looking forward to it, and we're looking forward to going down on Friday night and getting battled into it again. It's
probably next year before we're going to see you on the pitch again.
Yeah, unfortunately, probably maybe hopefully after New Year I'll get some rugby again. But if failing that, I'll hopefully aim for some sevens again. But yeah, I had a quite a bad injury at the start of the season, so just one of the things, part of the game.
Part of the game.
Part of the game.
You'll be back though.
I'll be back, definitely. I'm only 23, so.
Oh gosh.
That's when I retired. Good luck.
But of course, we're looking at the table, and Selkirk were down there, sort of second bottom. You've actually above Jed now, I think, and I think you're above GHA as well. So things are at least beginning to get back to some kind of normality for the club. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it helps bringing in boys like Dale mentioned, Kieran Clark, Callum Marshall. They've helped massively at the club. Getting boys like that in is great, and we're getting boys like Josh Welsh and things back as well from injury. So yeah, it's a consistent squad, and we've got competition there as well. So it's really great.
Who have you got out injured at the moment who's still got to come back?
Myself, Ryan Cottrell. I'd like to say Nixon, but he seems to battle on. He's always got something wrong with him.
Indestructible.
He's indestructible. He's still firing on. But yeah, there's a couple more boys, but when we get them back, we'll have a really strong squad. So.
Now, Jed and Selkirk, traditionally, they've always been very, very similar, haven't they? They've always punched above their weight. They've had the connection from the 1980s with John Rutherford of Selkirk playing fly half to Roy Laidlaw, scrum half for Jed, and there's always been that goodwill with the clubs as well off the pitch. But of course, when you get on the pitch, it's a different ball game. It's a border derby, and one of the great fixtures in the calendar that we look forward to every year. And of course, as I said earlier to Robert, Jed's probably got the edge in recent times, but you'll be sniffing out a result at Riverside Park after what happened at the weekend.
We have a strong squad, as I said before, and I know it's a tough place to go down to Riverside and get a result, but boys will be frustrated, and we'll try and use that to grind out a win down there and hopefully put a good performance on.
And we all agree, I think, that both teams love to throw the ball about, and they've got the backs to do that, and they've got some of the forwards as well who also like to throw the ball about. And we haven't seen the best of either club this season. Do you think? Wouldn't it be great if we had this high-scoring fiesta on Friday night? I can't see it happening because it's a border derby, but stranger things have happened.
No, Friday nights anything can happen because usually you get some weird scores on a Friday. But you're right; they've got great players. I think you look at Jed and Gregor Law in the second row is a brilliant player. The players that they've got in the back row now, they've got a really good balance. But Roth coming back, giving them the experience. Monroe, I think he's almost, I don't know if he's still at 10, but he's certainly started to find his position at 10. Great boot, a good rugby brain in him as well, and we all know what the youngs can do. They've got so many good players. Selkirk on on the other hand, you've mentioned a couple of them. Scott McClymont's very, industrious in the back row. Ewan McDougall leads from the front. They've got good players with experience like Andrew Rennick coming off the bench. Pickles has been really good. I do like Callum Anderson at 10 as well. I think he's perhaps, he can be a little bit of a maverick. He's a good inventive player. So they've got the good there. Jack Hamilton's a really good 9 as well. So I do like both teams, and I would love nothing more for them to chuck it about. But it's one of the things that you can add to the melting pot, because we don't really know what kind of game we're going to get. Obviously, off the back of last week, 10-all, you would think it's going to be a bit of stalemate on Friday, but I do doubt it. I think both teams will come out that tunnel on Friday, and it'll be a really good game of rugby.
Well, that's about it for this week. I'd like to say thanks to Robert Hogg of Jedforest, and obviously Aaron McComb from Selkirk, and Dale Clancy from No Fixed Abode.
You're living
really. And of course to Rob Moffat as well earlier on in the programme. But it's going to be an interesting weekend, and we'll be covering it over the weekend for you as well. But that's it from us for today, and we'll see you next week.